Good morning, Sophia. I'm Dr. Johnson, Dr. Vernon Johnson, and I'm a child and adolescent psychiatrist. Now, have you been seen by a psychiatrist before?
No.
So, my background is in pediatrics, which means I've always worked with kids, sometimes little kids, sometimes big kids. But in psychiatry, I specialize in helping kids who have trouble with their feelings, their behaviors, and also sometimes kids who are having a hard time in school. And we do that sometimes by just talking to kids. Sometimes we use things like medications, even sometimes other types of therapies. But today, we actually have the scheduled time just to kind of get to know each other a little bit and kind of talk about some of the issues that brought you in. Mm-hmm. Now, I've actually spent a great deal of time reviewing all of your history, and I certainly won't rehash all of that here, but I certainly hope to kind of incorporate those things that I think are really important as they relate to some of the scans. Okay?
Okay.
Right. Now, in reading the history, I understand that one of the major problems has actually been that of depression. And it sounds like you've had depression for some time. Can you tell me a little about that?
Yeah. So basically, my depression started when I was like around 8 years old, mm-hmm. I think. I don't really know like exactly what the cause of it was. Mm-hmm. Probably like multiple things. But yeah, it's been like hard dealing with it through the years and mm-hmm. stuff. But yeah, I'm just really trying to like get help and like solve all of that.
What are some of the more significant symptoms of depression that you're having right now?
Probably like zoning out a lot. Mm-hmm. Like kind of avoiding school, I guess, mm-hmm. like oversleeping, not really staying on schedule.
You know, quite often when people talk about depression, they often talk about sadness, but it sounds like you're describing more of low energy, lack of motivation, poor concentration in school,
yeah,
things like that. I understand also that you've also struggled recently with some anxiety symptoms. Can you describe those feelings for me?
Yeah, I mean, recently I did have like a panic attack kind of thing. Mm-hmm. It's like really random, but like, for example, I was like at this concert and all of a sudden like I just started panicking and like mm-hmm. was feeling like I couldn't breathe. Mm-hmm. So like I sat down on the floor at a concert and then like I just felt better. But it's just things like that. I just like overthink, my thoughts go crazy, and like a lot of anxiety just tensens up and it's like mm-hmm. weird.
So during this episode where you felt really anxious and overwhelmed, there are actually some physical symptoms like the shortness of breath. Sometimes people also experience things like heart palpitations or hand tremors, things like that. Did you, even sweating, did you experience anything like that?
Definitely sweating was mm-hmm. a big thing, yeah.
Okay. You need more of those physical symptoms.
Did you think sometimes your tummy hurts? Sorry, not to interrupt.
No. I mean, I do feel like just breaking out and like crying sometimes when it gets like really bad. And sometimes like getting nauseous, I guess, but that's really it.
But you have experienced any problems with things like chronic worry, where you just kind of worry about things for no apparent reason?
Sometimes, but not a lot.
Okay. Mm-hmm. But definitely those periods where you feel just kind of nervous and anxious and...
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And really that sense of like things are just kind of out of control for you.
Yeah.
Okay. One last thing. In fact, I think your mom alluded to this, and that was the history of ADHD, or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so I do have ADHD and also ADD. I feel I have more of ADD than ADHD, but my mom does say that I do have ADHD. So
There's how many types? 7 different types.
yeah.
I've tried to encourage the reading of this.
So you've read Dr. Amon's book.
Oh yeah, and I just downloaded another book about brain health. So I encourage you to read, and also your ADD for Teenagers book.
Okay, all right. So we'll certainly kind of talk about those things as we move forward as well. Okay? All right. Now, before we look at your scans, I have a couple of examples of normal scans that I wanted to kind of share with you. Okay? Now, the first scan is actually called a surface scan, all right, or a surface view. And so as that technetium that I was telling you about, as it kind of goes through the outer surface part of the brain, we're able to capture these pictures. And this outer surface part is actually known as the neocortex. And the neocortex is really the thinking part of the brain, okay? Certainly where we do calculations, where we formulate thought, where we process information, things that we see, things that we hear throughout the day. All of that's done in this neocortex, or the thinking part of the brain. Now, because the camera on the scanner is able to kind of move around different angles, we're able to offer these different views. We're also able to look deeper inside, okay? And in this case, we're able to see deeper into the limbic structures of the emotional part of the brain, okay? And in fact, we call these active views. And so when we look deeper inside, this is where color really does matter, okay?
Color matters.
Color matters here, okay, on these active views. In fact, the significance of the color is that the dark blues actually represent areas of decreased blood flow, decreased activity. The red actually represents areas of increased blood flow, increased activity. And the white is the highest level of blood flow or activity. In fact, we call that white hot. Okay?
I had a lot of white hot today, I'll tell you that.
Right. We're going to use this later on as a frame of reference to look at other parts of your brain. But we're going to start by looking at your surface scans. We're going to look in these regions here first, okay?
Got my fingers crossed, honey.
All right. All right. You ready to see your first scan?
Yeah.
Don't freak out.
All right. This is your first scan.
That looks really good, Sophia.
Actually, it does. It looks very good.
I'm really so happy to see this, knowing some of what I know.
Okay. I mean, when you look at size, volume, all of that just tells me that you've got a very, very nice brain. Okay? Really does.
Good looking brain, honey.
Good looking brain. Excellent. Excellent.
I'm kind of noticing, some dents. Like these are a little full. There's a little bit of...
So we often refer to that as scalloping.
What's that?
Only because so it's these contour changes, and the radiologist kind of likened it to scalloped potatoes. Okay? And when we see that, it's sometimes an indication of maybe some toxicity. And I understand that your home was actually
Yeah, we had to move.
Mold.
Yeah, we had to move in this last 6 months, so I didn't realize until it got so severe.
Mold is really very, very toxic, and can be manifested in different ways. Sometimes low energy, lack of motivation, poor concentration. All of those things are certainly examples of what mold toxicity can certainly do. Now, in addition to looking at the surface part of the brain, I also wanted to kind of show you what the emotional part of your brain looks like.
Let's get to the good stuff.
All right. Now, I always like to kind of talk about this again. Remember, this is where color really does matter. And so I just wanted to remind you that the dark blues actually represent areas of decreased blood flow, decreased activity. But sometimes I characterize that as areas of calm, okay? Because when we talk about the emotional part of the brain, the blue is actually kind of nice, okay? But the red represents increased activity, and then of course the white is the highest level of activity, okay?
Okay.
Now, as we look at your scan,
Looking
this is
good.
yours. You've got a lot of activity now.
Okay.
Okay. Your cerebellum actually looks pretty good.
It's all functioning, I swear.
Yeah. Both sides and in the middle. Okay. But just above the cerebellum is actually another region, actually the thalamus. The thalamus is actually a deep limbic structure that's actually responsible for the regulation of mood. In fact, we call the thalamus the mood manager. Okay. Mm-hmm. And when we see a thalamus is actually not just simply red hot, but white hot, mm-hmm. like yours, it often correlates with some mood dysregulation. Maybe things like mood swings, irritability, low frustration tolerance, even chronic sadness. Okay? And so, this tells me that, there may be quite a bit of depression going on. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. There's also increased activity out here. And these are actually the basal ganglia. The basal ganglia are really 3 nuclei in the brain. And what we're able to see here primarily, the very active one, is actually the caudate nucleus of the basal ganglia. And when we see increased activity in the caudate, it often correlates with some anxiety symptoms. Things like chronic worry, nervousness, even symptoms of panic. Okay. And even though it's not white hot, it's still very, very active. And so I definitely have some concerns about kind of calming these areas down. Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm going to recommend a brain and body power bags. That's actually a very nice combination of multivitamins, minerals, omega-3 fatty acids, but also some very specific brain nutrients to improve blood flow and circulation here. Mm-hmm. Okay?
Yeah.
So we'll do all of that. I'm actually also going to recommend another supplement called serotonin mood support. And the serotonin mood support is a 5-HTP, which helps the brain's development of serotonin, which is a very important neurotransmitter that's often found deficient in people who struggle with depression and also anxiety. Mm-hmm. Okay, and I think the serotonin mood support would help these areas.
That's awesome.
Okay? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I often recommend cognitive behavioral therapy.
Yeah.
Okay, have you heard of CBT? Okay, so cognitive behavioral therapy is a wonderful therapy. A lot of people might liken it to kind of talk therapy, but it's really so much more. It's really teaching us how to kind of process our own thoughts, especially to identify negative intrusive thoughts that might trigger anxiety symptoms. And as we deal with those negative thoughts, it helps us to kind of break them down, kind of analyze them, and kind of do our own critical review of each thought by asking ourselves, is that true? Is it really true? And if so, what makes it true? And by doing that critical analysis of just thoughts that pop into our head, we find that we're better able to control anxious feelings, even depressive feelings. Okay. In fact, the studies show, we have these wonderful long-term follow-up studies where we followed patients for over 30 years.
Oh, wow, that's wonderful.
Oh, yeah. And it's amazing that cognitive behavioral therapy is actually found to be one of the greatest treatment options in terms of offering long-term, lifelong benefits. Okay.
I'm all for the CBT.
Okay. Good deal. Good deal.
I'm excited for you.
Yeah.
It's good to know.
Mm-hmm.
All right, go Sophia, go.
All right. I like that. Go Sophia, go.
Yeah.
You've got your own cheerleader.
All the way.